Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. Background: my grandparents have always been a big part of my life, as have the rest of my family. They had 5 children, including my father, and 13 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren. My grandparents are quite rich. They had 3 businesses until last year when my grandfather died. I am the child of my grandchildren and have always been very close to them. My grandma used to babysit me until I could go to kindergarten. I wrap Christmas presents for her every year. I decorate their house, and I worked at their bar on Fridays in college, no pay, as they are too old to do these things themselves. All this was offered to my cousins, but they never helped. My grandparents ran a show horse farm for over 40 years. It was what my father took with him and I quickly began to love. I used to go every weekend with my grandma up until high school when I started studying. Even though I don't ride horses anymore, my dad and I go to clean the stalls and look after the horses every week when my grandparents are away on trips. Usually once every 2 months. My grandparents were a huge part of my life. Problem: my grandmother died 4 weeks ago. It was devastating. My grandmother left my aunts, uncles, and dad about $85,000 each. Money for which she and my grandfather worked very, very hard. It was expected. What was not expected was that they would leave me just over $45,000 along with some other valuables. I was honestly shocked. All my cousins received about $2,000 each and a few trinkets. Obviously you can see where it was going. My aunts and uncles were at the reading when I was told, so they told their children. Everyone except the parents is furious. My cousins, who are already adults, demand that I divide them equally. I don't feel like I should. I was very close to my grandparents and did a lot for them, but it's hard. My family is very tight-knit and we have holidays / monthly parties / dinners / etc. together, every year. I never expected money to tear us apart. This money can change a lot for me. I could pay off my $10,000 student loan and put the rest into my upcoming wedding / future kids / savings account. A small part of me wants to share it equally, just to have everyone together. But there was a reason they left this to me. They didn't do it to hurt anyone. I was the only one who visited them and helped them. None of them took the time to see them, except for family gatherings. But no one understands this except my parents. It seems to me that I alone destroy the family. My aunts and uncles won't talk to my father until I split the money, and my cousins won't talk to me. I only have a student loan and a car payment, so I don't have much debt, but it could give me a comfortable future. They all keep throwing in my face that they have families, house payments, college to pay for, etc. They keep saying I've been planning this for a long time, but I really didn't. I loved my grandparents. My fiancé tells me to forget about them and do what's best for me, but I'm a big family man. I don't want to split the money, that could really help me, but I feel like they can play with me, forcing me to choose between them and this. My parents also want me to keep the money for myself, as they think my family members are being ridiculous and demanding it. Is it right for me to keep that much? I feel like I deserve it. Is it right for me to put this money on my family? Or are the people I've been so close to all my life taking advantage of me? $45,000 versus $2,000 is a huge difference. PS. There is more in the will than I explained. Houses, classic cars, horses, farm, land, CDs, etc. The cashback / checking accounts I was given is the only thing that seems to be a problem for everyone. I have inherited more money than my cousins. They demand that I divide it equally between them or never speak to them again. My husband and I have been married for 3 years now. I have a daughter, 15 years old, and he has a son, 24 years old. I am friendly with my stepson, but we aren't close. He has a biological mother who is a perfectly fine woman. I'm not here to take the role of his mom. My late husband, my daughter's father, died when my daughter was 6. We both contributed to her college fund. My daughter's paternal grandparents have also contributed a large amount. Right now, the fund has about $180,000. My daughter is extremely bright, and I'm not just saying that because I'm her mom. I truly believe she has the capacity to go to an Ivy League school, and her teachers have said she has the potential as well. And I don't want costs to hold her back. Our income would be too high to get any meaningful financial aid. And while there are a few merit-based scholarships out there that she will be applying to, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket and hope she gets it when it's so competitive. My current husband and I have separate finances. He doesn't contribute at all to my daughter's fund. My stepson is struggling with a heroin addiction and has stolen money, jewelry, heirlooms, and electronics from us for drug money. I understand that addiction is a disease, and I personally paid for an outpatient detox for him, which cost $1,000, which failed. His father then paid for an outpatient rehab program, which cost $6,500, which also didn't work because he barely showed up. He promised us he'd do better next time and he needed another chance. So I split the cost of another $6,500 outpatient rehab program with my husband, which seemed to work during program, but he relapsed as soon as he got out of it. I have spent so much money, time, and energy and it hasn't helped at all. My husband and my stepson want to try a 60-day inpatient rehab program, which will cost $30,000. I had absolutely no idea where they were supposed to get the money for that, considering the thousands and thousands of dollars that were already spent, and the fact that we no longer had anything of value in our house. They want to use my daughter's college fund, which to me is absolutely off limits. I feel like it's completely unfair to my daughter to punish her for my stepson's addiction, unfair to my late husband and his parents, but frankly, I don't think spending $30,000 will work. My husband thinks I'm an asshole because I'm prioritizing my daughter's education over his son's life. and he believes medical needs come first. He then asked my daughter if she'd be willing to use $30,000 from her fund to pay for her stepbrother's rehab. And she got very quiet and did not answer. He then got very upset with her and said she was being selfish. My daughter later told me that she didn't want to give her stepbrother the money, but she felt so guilty. And I am furious at my husband for emotionally guilt-tripping my daughter like that. My apartment complex didn't do traditional trick or treating on Halloween. Residents were advised to set out pre-packaged individual candy bags on their patios / front door areas if they wanted to participate, but the traditional knock on door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So, Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up and each building has a scheduled time where the kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbor offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later my kids came home with a small bucket of candy. 6 little goodie bags each from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine. And my kids didn't say anything weird had happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. The next day I took my kids to the park directly across from our apartment complex. My neighbor was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing and she took out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse and started to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy and my daughter eventually noticed. Ran up and asked if she could have a piece and my neighbor responded, "Nope, this is my tax candy. Remember that this was my reward for taking you trick or treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement and asked what she meant. She said that since she is the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and said, "You only took 2 bags from us." She responded with, "But I'm your mom. I was doing OP a favor so they get a higher candy tax." I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy and decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy and then said, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I explained what gelatin was and how a lot of those candies are made with it. She was horrified, Googles it and then told her kids that they were leaving. She said something about how she was going to be sick and stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her and won't let her kids play if she shows up at the park and we are there. My husband thinks I'm an asshole cause I should have either not said anything about the gelatin or said something right away when I noticed. I don't think it's my job to tell a vegan what is and isn't vegan though, and she deserved it for stealing candy from little kids. When we got home from the park after the gelatin incident, I sat my kids down and asked why they didn't tell me that the neighbor took half of their candy. My oldest kid is 6 and my youngest kid is 4. 6-year-old explained that as they went door to door during their designated trick-or-treating time, she would have my 4-year-old grab 2 bags instead of 1 from each apartment for the majority of them. She explained it to my kids that they were grabbing extra bags for her to be handed over at the end as taxation. So either freaking way she was directly taking candy from my kids or taking candy from other kids through mine. As for the authenticity of her vegan sim, I may have exaggerated when I said super vegan when I first posted this. She claims to be vegan and is very in people's faces about the benefits, etc. It's 100% about the health side. She brags about veganism curing cancer, diabetes, even some mental health issues. I have never once heard her talk about the benefits for animals. She also sells herbal tea products, customized gym clothing, etc. So she totes a pretty big vegan lifestyle. If that makes sense. Now for the gelatin. She knows what gelatin is, she knows what it's made out of, she knows that there are obvious things that she can't eat. But she had no idea that a lot of candy specifically had gelatin apparently. When I told her that they had gelatin in it, she knew what gelatin was but Googled the candies to see if I was correct. I think she is either really dumb or she eats non-vegan stuff all the time when no one's watching, and had to pretend to be horrified about it at this point. Cause a lot of you guys have pointed out that you literally can't be vegan and not know these things. I'm not vegan, I'm not even freaking vegetarian, and I know these things.